I consider anyone who reads, well, mainly men. I consider men who read Atomic Habits toxic. If they mention the book Atomic Habits to me, especially if it's a man, I'm like, toxic? Red
I
flag.
know.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Fangirl Feels. My name is Olivia.
My name's Tanya.
And we're the podcast where we have an emotional analysis of all the books, TVs, movies, all the things that give us all the feelings. And it is officially December, everyone, which means we had our Spotify Wrapped. I feel like we got to just talk about that right away.
Yes, like our personal Spotify Wraps, and then Spotify. I didn't even know that Spotify did a Wrapped for podcasts. My friend asked me, like, "Hey, it'd be really cool to see it," and it's shareable. I could share it with other people, so that's cool. But
Oh,
yes,
that's awesome.
yeah,
I didn't
they
know
could see
that. I
it. They
didn't
didn't
know.
have to be logged in. So,
Dang. And we were the top podcast for 41 people, which like is more than I ever imagined, especially in the first year, not even a full year, starting a podcast. We're very new to this. We're still learning, and we just really appreciate it. Like that's huge. We're just so thankful.
yes, it's easy. We were just talking about this, that it's easy to think that like no one listens to us because we're just talking to ourselves, and we do look at like metrics, and like Spotify for podcasters gives us like graphs and visuals to look at data. But you know, that's just it's hard to like match that to the people who actually listen to us. And so it was really cool to see people share, you know, people send us screenshots that we were in their top 5 podcasts that they listen to throughout the year.
I know that was super cool. And people are like, yeah, who actually were just like, you were in my top 5. I'm like, what? That's amazing. Like, you don't know what that means. That's so cool that you even want to like take time out of your day to listen to us. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We heart you.
Heart. Thanks everyone.
Anyway, we appreciate that. That's so nice. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. What were we can just say briefly, who was your top artist, did you say? Who was your
It's
Spotify?
always Ariana Grande. And because I just whenever I create playlists, I will often like add older songs to it that I want to hear again, or like that matches the vibe of that playlist. So even though she like didn't drop an album this past year, she was still in my top. Actually, there were a lot of pop artists, and I don't know. I think that like I just replay playlists a lot, and then it ended up showing me a lot of artists that like I was like, oh, I'm surprised that that's my top. Versus I thought last year felt more or authentic to me. Versus this year, it didn't feel as authentic, but maybe it's like more accurate data wise. Who knows? I don't know how their algorithm works, but how do you feel about that?
Interesting. That's interesting. Who did you get? Like there was a one portion of it that said like your listening style or like what was it? Like the way that you listen to music. And I got Time Traveler. Whereas like I go back to like frequent old playlists. Did you get that? That sounds like that would be what you got then.
I actually got The Alchemist, which makes sense as well, where I just pull from old I'm constantly making new playlists based off like moods and feelings and time of the year. So that's somewhat similar, that I am pulling from older music. But yeah, but it sounds like you're going back to other playlists that you made.
I think I just go back to my previous playlists, yeah, rather than make new ones. That makes sense. Oh, interesting. So you don't feel like this was accurate to you? Like you feel like, in what ways do you feel like it wasn't accurate?
Well, to be fair, so here's the reason why I don't think it probably is accurate. I think there's less data points to give it because I didn't listen to Spotify as much as I did in previous years because I listened to a lot of audiobooks this year. And so I was listening to and reading books. And so there was like a lot less minutes that I listened to Spotify this year. So that's why. Probably so with less data points, it could only use the data that I gave it, which would be like if I take a road trip and I'm playing all my pop hits. And it said that I listen to a lot of pop, which I do, but I felt like I listened to like other genres more often. But it's probably, if it's telling me that the data is accurate, it's probably accurate. It just didn't feel that way, which is subjective. So.
I see. No, I see. You're just like, because you're listening to less music, it's like maybe focusing on the times that you did listen to music, whereas you holistically like don't feel like that was accurate because you're not looking at necessarily like 1 year, but it was just looking at like 1 year's worth of data, obviously, because that's all it had at that moment. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's a perfect summary. Yeah.
Wow. I try. It's like we're researchers or something. It's like that's what
I
we do.
know, weird.
Incredible. I felt like mine was pretty accurate. I do, it is interesting. I think we do all listen to less music more and more. Like every year, I think I listen to less. But my top artist was, of course, drum roll.
I wonder who. Was it
I
Limp Bizkit?
wonder. I wonder. It was Limp Bizkit. You got
Ah,
it. Wow, how did you know?
I
It was
knew.
Limp Bizkit. No, it was Taylor Swift, of course, for like the fourth year in a row. But I used to be in her like 0.01% of fans and held that title very strongly. And now it was only the top 1% of fans because it's grown so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been bamboozled. People have taken my spot from me. I mean, I don't know. It's fine. And people are allowed. I'm happy for her. They're allowed to listen to her. Um, so yeah, Taylor Swift. Unsurprising.
Yeah, I feel like tour years totally skew that data because everyone's just like has that music on in the background. You know, they're listening to her more often to like get ready for the tour and post tour.
My friend, the friend I went with to the Eras tour with, who like so I mean, she's a big Taylor Swift fan. She was in the 0.01% of Taylor Swift fans. I was like, wow, amazing. And she said that she listened. So her top song was Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift. And she's like, honestly, though, I just listened to a playlist where it played Cruel Summer 100 times over because people were trying to make it the number one song for like one of her number one singles. There's like this whole initiative around getting it to be number one. And so she just listened to a playlist that was just Cruel Summer on repeat 100 times. She's like, so that's why. And I'm like, dang, that is commitment to
Wow.
the goal.
That is commitment.
She's like, so it wasn't surprising when Cruel Summer was number one. I'm like, wow, there's no, I would never do that. Good for you. I would never do that.
I love that there was an initiative. They had a meeting, the Swifties, and they're like, "Is this the next motion?" Yes, and they all said yay or nay. That's
There
crazy.
literally was. It was literally like everyone, we need to get Cruel Summer to number one. And they just went for it. I listened to Cruel Summer a lot, so I listened to it, but I didn't like go out of my way to listen to it more.
If only you had Olivia, you'd be in that top 0.001%.
You're right. You're right. I should have. You're
Yeah.
correct.
Why don't
Honestly.
you mess with the clowns? You know what I mean? You got to get
Yeah.
down with the Swifty clowns.
So the Swifty clowns who thought Reputation was being announced a while ago. R.I.P. All
Wait,
right.
so can you explain? So is she going to remake? Because she has albums that weren't part of her previous label. So how many albums is she going to remake?
So it was her first 6 albums that she needs to re-record, and she's re-recorded 4 so far. So she has 2 left. She has 10 albums total. So her last 4 albums were with her current labels and she owns. Yeah, her first 6 are the ones she's re-recorded. So yeah, 2 more left.
And it's like a surprise when she'll announce the next one, yes?
It is a surprise. She does give a lot of hints. Like if you've been made aware of like Taylor Swift culture, she loves Easter eggs and loves like having people try and like figure things out. So like people knew when were able to guess like when she was announcing 1989, and people were able to guess when she was announcing Speak Now. So that's why like so every album like there's like tends to be like hints to it, so it's not a complete surprise when it happens. If you're like paying attention to Swiftie lore, I guess.
All the
Um,
time.
all the time, yeah. So that's why like but people will read into a lot of things. And so when people thought she was going to announce Reputation a few weeks ago, it's because they thought she dropped these clues, but they weren't the right clues. So we'll
They were
see.
clowning around.
They were clowning. Yeah. They were like, this girl is wearing black, and like they'll look at her music video, and her music video has like some hints. I think she's gonna announce it into February, maybe. That's what it seemed like. She'll announce it in February because she had like a finger on it too. It's like people will look at things like that. I don't know. It's like that intense. But yeah. So there tends to be clues as to when they will be announced. So we'll see.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny. I saw a post where when Beyonce came to Taylor's movie premiere, they're like, oh, Beyonce's wearing silver and black, which is a reference to Reputation or something. But it's like they didn't realize Beyonce's whole album was silver. That was Beyonce's branding. Like it had nothing to do with Taylor.
I saw that too. And it's like, I don't think Beyonce is going to have a Reputation hint at her own premiere. But I saw that people were looking at Taylor's outfit. Yeah, and we're like, there's a snake. It's like, that's not a snake. That's glitter.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, I don't think that was a snake. I don't know. I looked at it and I was like, that doesn't look like a snake to me. But okay.
They're clowning. They're clowning.
Like, I think we can say Reputation is next. I think that seems pretty clear. But as to when, I don't know. I don't do enough work to like have a real guess. I just listen to what people say.
And that's why you'll never be 0.001% again. I'm so sorry. I'm just kidding.
I mean, that hurt, but you're right. You are right. I will continue to say I am not the top Swiftie. My family seems to think that I am like number one Swiftie. And I'm like, you guys, no, I am nowhere near number one Swiftie. That's the T on T, the T on TS.
Yeah, no Travis this week.
No Travis. We don't need him. He's fine. Well, anyway, we can move into Fangirl Finds, which we've pivoted our Fangirl Finds a little bit to be more about topics or pop culture news, which all of this was kind of pop culture news. But one thing that's been appearing on my feed a lot lately has been around Fourth Wing, because Iron Flame came out earlier in November. And there was this article from Bloomberg that was titled, it was asking the question, is Booktok turning the publishing world into fast fashion? And I mean, the title of the article is TikTok is turning the publishing world into fast fashion. And we've seen a lot of like commentary around this, people agreeing with this, people disagreeing with it. And we've had our own thoughts around Fourth Wing. Again, if you guys don't read Fourth Wing, all you have to know, it's like a very popular book on the internet that's like a dragon. It's a fantasy romance, very heavy on the romance with like a light fantasy that's not necessarily written very well, and had 2 books come out in the span of 6 months. So I'd seen pros, like people say that they definitely agree with this because of like how poorly the books were written and how fast they came out. And it is just like basically the fast fashion model. And they do these like drops where like people were buying special edition versions of this book without seeing it. Did you hear about that?
No, I did
You
not.
didn't hear about this? That like there was a untitled, like basically no picture product that got put on like Amazon that said it was from Red Tower Books, and people just bought it without any data around it, thinking it was something related to Iron Flame, and it ended up being like a Fourth Wing special edition book. And people just bought it though, sight unseen. They had no idea what it was, and they just bought it. It's
like
crazy.
The housing market too. What's happening here? What's
it is
going
like the housing
on?
market. Yeah, people are crazy. So yeah, like this book has created an interesting phenomenon around book purchasing that I do think like we do need to step away from. But do I think that the Booktok world is turning books into fast fashion? I don't know. Like one of the critiques of this article, it said a publisher shouldn't be comfortable with having an author so openly take inspiration from a subject matter they're not intimately familiar with. I don't agree with that statement. This was in like relation to the Gallic issue where she like was using a language she doesn't understand, which I agree with that. But I don't know. I don't think books are like fast fashion because of Booktok. I think some books have lost some quality, but I don't think the publishing industry has become fast fashion. I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
That is interesting. I'd never heard of this perspective until you said that. And I haven't looked fully throughout this article, but I'm curious. Like, I also agree. Like, there are some similarities that they pulled out. Like, sure, like people are pumping out books a lot faster. It seems like some publishers are just like finding authors that are popular as opposed to like taking the time to find quality content. But also it's like they should look at like the effects of like, I don't think it equates if you're looking at the effects of fast fashion on the world and then the effects of like of the writing industry. I think there's obviously differences. I think they just tried to relate certain similarities, which I get. But yeah, I don't think it's nearly as bad. There are some things that do need to be called out that we have been saying that like there's quality issues and like people like getting books that don't meet the standards of like publishing, you know, that they were excited for. Speaking of like the Iron Flame book release, you know, but yeah, that it's an interesting dialogue. I'll say that this started a conversation, so I think that's great.
Yeah, I think there's no like right or wrong answer. I just think it's interesting. I think there's some aspects. Yeah, I think you said it right. Some aspects where I agree, other aspects where I don't. I heard an interesting like opposing viewpoint where it's like, do we just do this to anything that women like? Like, oh, because romantasy, Iron Flame, Fourth Wing are like these really romantic, like romantasy novels. Are we just like shutting it down because it's like a female centered story? And I think two things can be true at once. I think like it can be a poorly written book. I think that's true. And then I also think like we also just devalue it because it is written for women. And then we're just saying that the publishing industry is fast fashion because it's gearing towards women and anything women like is bad. Like, ouch.
That's
Fair.
a good point. I mean, and that's fair too. And often, I mean, I do sometimes when I critique books like this, there's a part of me that does feel bad because like, again, it's like, did you like it and did you have fun? You know, how are you measuring how good a book is? What metrics are you using? Because if like, did you like it? Did you have fun? Did you cry? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it with friends? Yes. Because I have friends, one of my book clubs, like many of the women really like Fourth Wing, and that's great. And I support that and I want them to. I have like, I guess a more like critical analysis of the book that we decided to take. That's our perspective because we're comparing to other books that we've read. But like it's true, like it is a lot of like feminine traits forward. Like it's a book that has a lot of feminine traits forward compared to other books. Like if you're reading Brandon Sanderson, which he's a great writer, but like he doesn't have to write women the same way. And it's fair for women to like Fourth Wing over other types of books. And so that's true.
Yeah.
I'll just say like, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I and like we've said this, we've taken a critical approach to Fourth Wing to some extent, but even in our Fourth Wing episode, we were both like, we're here. Like I did genuinely and have fun reading it. It's like two things can exist. I like, do I think it was the best book I've ever written? No. But do I like did I have fun and did I actually finish it? Which to me is like a big testament to if I liked it. I did finish it, which I wouldn't if I didn't. So yeah, I do think there's just like the whole romantasy genre we've like belittled. And I know I'm guilty of doing this too, of being like, that's just for women and it's like smut. And I mean, some of that I do think the smut thing is like a whole different conversation. But when we're gearing things towards like women, do we just like inevitably think of it as lesser? And yeah, that's sad. We shouldn't.
Yeah, we should. That's true. It's like Twilight all over again. The way that was belittled, and it was like a silly like silly book, but like you have to like take into account the cultural phenomenon that occurred because of it. You know.
Yeah, and people are having fun, like you said, and are reading, and like, isn't that the point? Aren't we just wanting to read?
That's the point. That's the point, everyone. I know several people who had their reading renaissance, me included, with ACOTAR. Like you got me into, and that started my reading renaissance in 2020. And I now have a friend who flew through all the ACOTAR books in literally like 3 weeks. And I'm like, is that possible? It is.
Yeah, my cousin did the same. She read all of 5 of them, all of them in like 2 weeks. And I was like, dang, good for you. Like, that's awesome. Like, yeah, that is behavior I want to encourage. So yeah, let's not. Yeah. So I think like belittling women's reading habits is always going to be bad. And we need to call it out when it happens.
Make that sticker, Olivia.
Yeah. That's a long sticker.
Women's
Something like a 4-sentence long sticker. Funny.
Make it a shirt.
This took a turn that I actually didn't expect to take, but good conversation.
Yeah.
So on to the main discussion today, which is books that we did not finish, popular books that we did not finish or did not like. So I put both because, as we've discussed before, I DNF books. I do not finish books that I do not like. And Tanya will push through. She is a soldier. She does a great job reading books, but she may not like it. So that's why we have to have both. Like either did not finish or just did not like. So we'll do this as like, I'll mention one, you mention one, like we always do. And I only put 5 I think. So
I think I put 3 or 4. So
sweet. Okay.
I do want to say we had if there are psychologists listening, please describe our attachment style because like Olivia said, like I move on. It's a great analogy to our perhaps how we handle relationships. Read a book and I move on from it super quickly, and then I finish that book. I have to like devour it. Versus Olivia has a very different, probably attachment style.
I cannot. I'm out of there. The moment I'm like, nope, not for me. Goodbye. Peace. But then the books I do love, I'm like, let me mourn for 45 years over you. I love you. Let me make a playlist and let me think about you for weeks until I'm ready to move on 2 years later.
Yeah, still 5.
5. I never move on, to be honest. For honest. I just like allow myself kind of to move on. Yeah, I do think this is a attachment style for sure. Okay, the first book I have on my list is really, it's not just a book, it's like a genre of books, but it's a particular author. But anything by Emily Henry, I DNF'd. I started People We Meet on Vacation. I think I also started another one of hers, but People We Meet on Vacation I heard was one of the best ones. And it's about these two best friends, this guy and a girl who were like best friends in college, but then they kind of separate over time, but then they go on a lot of vacations together while they were friends. And then after they had a falling out, they come back together and go on one last like summer trip together and eventually fall in love. I just didn't I don't like contemporary romance. This is going to be a thing. I just do not like it. And I wanted to like it. I don't think Emily Henry is the worst of the contemporary romance writers, but I was just like, I'm not interested. Goodbye. I don't care.
I was dying as I was writing my list. I saw that you said anything by this author. You said never.
I just can't. Yeah, which is sad because I will stand by. I think there's Colleen Hoover, who is her own thing, and I don't even consider her. I know myself. I will never consider Colleen Hoover, and I think that is a general popular take. Colleen Hoover is not great. And Emily Henry, I think
polarizing for sure.
She's very polarizing. Yeah, and so I didn't even attempt anything Colleen Hoover. Emily Henry, I think, is better than her, but it's just not for me. I'm just not a contemporary romance reader. I'm just not for me.
That's fair. Good to know that about yourself.
Yeah, that's fair. What about you? What first book you have?
So, like we mentioned, I don't DNF often, but there were a couple books within the past 3 or 4 years that I dropped, or for whatever reason stopped reading even though I liked it. So I'll explain. But my first example, I guess, is because Libby, you only have a limited time to rent that book. It's either 2 weeks or a month or less than that. I will be reading a book and then it'll be returned and I won't get it for months. So for those reasons, I've actually had to drop lots of books, and then I lose interest because I'm reading a new book. So one of those that I'm waiting to get back in my hands or on my digital hands is called The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. It was pretty good. So I'm going to read the synopsis and you tell me if this sounds interesting to you at all. It got me interested. But so after a storm has killed off all the island's men, great already, 2 women in a 1600s Norwegian coastal village struggle to survive against both natural forces and the men who have been sent to rid the community of alleged witchcraft. So I was like, yes, done. Bring it on. It does move kind of slow, but I thought it was a pretty good book. But yeah, for that reason, because Libby sent it back, I haven't read it, and I don't know when I'll get it back. So,
oh, that does sound like something you would like. That sounds very on brand for you. So this wasn't really you didn't like it. It was just you lost it. Someone took it out of your hands.
They took it out of my hand, and yeah, and then the thing that happens is when I do get it back, it's possible that I'll be immersed in a different book, so I won't be able to finish it. But we'll see. I don't know.
That's fair. Yeah, that does sound. I mean, I'm intrigued by that. I would read it, maybe.
It's possible you might not like it because there's no love story at all, and it's very I think she did a lot of research. Yeah, peace out.
And for those reasons, I'm out.
I think this author did a lot of research into like the history, like you have to in the 1600s. Like it's very historically accurate, I assume. So there's a lot of like details that are a little boring, but it was entertaining. I read halfway through. I didn't get to finish it. But yeah.
It does, yeah, it sounds interesting. That's cool. It's a cool time period for sure.
Yeah. How about you? I'm excited to hear about this next one.
Do you like how I just have anything? This is again similar vein. Anything by Ali Hazelwood. And this might be unfair, but I read one book of hers, The Love Hypothesis. Or no, Love Theoretically. Sorry, this is the wrong one. I read Love Theoretically. The Love Hypothesis is her most popular one, which is a Kylo Ren and Rey fanfic turned contemporary romance novel. But I read Love Theoretically, and it is about this girl who is like competing for a position at a school against like her rival, who this guy they obviously end up like falling in love, and they like pretend to date. I forget the entire book. I didn't hate it at first, but then halfway through it just kind of becomes unbearable. They're just like making out 24/7, and then there's like a third act breakup coming that's going to be stupid, and I didn't even finish it. I got 90% into the book and I was like, for my mental health, I cannot finish this. So I stopped it halfway through, or 90% of the way through, which is a record for me to like not just complete it. I should have just finished it, but I couldn't do it.
I'm surprised. Yeah, 90%. You're like, I'm out.
Yeah, literally, I was like 92%, and I was like, this is unbearable now. I got this far in, but it's unbearable. So I think I just like looked up a synopsis of what happened, and I called it done. I think I still considered it completed in my Goodreads like goals, because I was like 90% of the way through is pretty good. We're gonna say that I finished it, but yeah, again, I find when it comes to like smut, especially in a contemporary setting, I find that gross. I find it gross.
I like when we talked about this last time, you're like, this could be anyone, any man on the street.
Any man on the street. And it's not cute. Yeah. I'm like, I need fantasy around this to make this like appealing to me. Otherwise, this is just a man. And I don't like that. I don't like it. Not interested. So sorry to anyone who likes Ali Hazelwood books. I know my cousins really love Ali Hazelwood books, and I'm like, I'm out. For those reasons, I'm out.
You know yourself. Yes. And that's all that matters.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is a book that I still am processing. I don't know how I feel, but I put it on this list because we read it for our most recent book club. We read Dracula by Bram Stoker, which is an obvious classic, right? One thing I learned is that like the lore of Dracula existed before this book. I didn't know, or the lore of vampires. Like he didn't create vampires; he just wrote about it. But it was written in the 1800s, 1845, I think, when we Googled it. And so with that comes, what am I trying to say? Comes the culture from that time. So like the way he wrote about women were like, oh, this woman, bless her heart, don't tell her about the vampires because she has a frail woman mind. But you can tell her because she has a mind of a man, mixed, a mixture of a woman and a man because she is smart. And it's just like ridiculous in that way. But again, you can't like put our current day values on the past. So it's a struggle to read classics for that reason, So we all like went around and said like, what would we rate this? And it was hard to rate it. A lot of us like didn't know what to say. I mean, I'd probably give it like a 2 or 3. I mean, it was pretty good for like a book at that time. Like, I think it was ahead of its time. It was also scandalous because like biting on the neck is kind of sexual. And I don't know. I also sped through it because I was trying to finish it for the book club. So there's actually parts I don't remember reading. They mentioned things and I'm like, I don't remember that happening. So I think that if I were to reread it, it would be in a couple years just because I don't remember things that happened. But yeah, would I recommend it? Probably because it's a classic. If it came out today, I'd be like, I don't know, questionable. But yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, it's the classics are tough because you have to, yeah, read them in their time period. But we know that like writing and storytelling has come a long way. So it's like, how do you judge it and enjoy it with that lens in mind? Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough
Right.
one.
And the books we like today were inspired by those classics. Like the writers I like now, I read a lot of horror, watch a lot of horror films, were inspired by this book and the films that came out about it. So it's like, yeah, you got to view it with that lens. So that's why it's tough.
That's true. Yeah. Like I mean, this could be on this list, but like I couldn't read Lord of the Rings. I couldn't read the original Lord of the Rings because it's just so dense and so like prose heavy. I like just couldn't do it. I should try again as an adult, but like also recognize how integral Lord of the Rings is. Think it's an amazing story and know half of my reading tastes now are due to Lord of the Rings, right? Like fantasy, the entire genre of fantasy is basically a lot of his work. Like a lot of
Great.
Lord of the Rings.
We played D&D based off, yeah, his
Yes,
writings. Same.
basically. Yeah.
I've never
But
read it,
I
but I've
can't
heard the same thing that it's like hard to get through for that reason.
exactly. Yeah. But I tried it when I was like basically in high school, so I honestly shouldn't judge it. I should go back and try, but I'll be honest, I probably will struggle with it just as much now, if we're totally honest. But yeah, same conversation. Like, how do you view the classics? I don't know. You just like give them taps on the shoulder and you're like, thank you for existing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but I'm gonna pass. Yeah, thank you. But
Yeah, thank you, but I'll read your children, your grandchildren.
yes.
Like, thank you for having these kids. I like them. Okay, my next one is one I've mentioned before on this podcast. So yeah, this is another one I mentioned on this podcast. I read this in the beginning of the year, the Selection series, which is a dystopian book inspired by the Hunger Games, but is basically like The Bachelor. I read the first three. They're not good books, like first and foremost. But did I read them and did I have fun? Yes, I did. There was then the fourth book in the series, which was about their children. So, like, the book ends, the main characters get together. That's not a surprise. And they have a princess daughter who then it's her turn to pick an heir, like a husband. And I was like, I can't do this. I cannot complete this. I had enough candy. I am now filled with candy, and this is really bad. This is worse than it was. The other one was like acceptable candy. This is now like it's too sweet, too much bad. So I DNF'd it very quickly. I was like, we're done here.
It's lots of books, right, in the series?
It's like 6 books, I think, and I got into number 4, which is this one, and then I think there were maybe like 1 or 2 after this, and I was like, I had my fill. I had my fill. We're done here with
I
this
remember when you
nonsense.
first started the series, and I was like, should I read it? And I remember you saying like, no, you don't need.
You don't. Unless you really want something super easy, something to kind of laugh at, sure, read the selection. But no, you can move on with you do not need it in your life. No. Unnecessary.
Interesting. But you did notice there's a large like following for it, right?
It was popular. I think it came out like I thought I looked this up. It came out during the time when like dystopians were really popular. Um like around the Hunger Games era. When did this come out? 2012. So I guess it was just like around that time when these types of books were really popular, like Divergent, Hunger Games, um, Maze Runner, like these like dystopian, young adult dystopian books. This was kind of like the theme of the time when these books were coming out. And so I think just a lot of girls, like young girls, like I would have just graduated high school when this came out. Um, so it was like targeting like a young adult, like a young girl crowd in the same way that like Twilight was. Um, so I think people just have like an emotional attachment to it because it was like part of that original like reading renaissance that I think people were having back then. That we now talk a lot about that like new books are trying to gear back towards that audience, like since we've now grown up. So I think that's like where it was coming from. Like I saw that so many people loved this book and I knew it was older and I just wanted to read it to like understand why people loved this book. But I think it's mainly just out of nostalgia. I don't think this was like a genuinely good book. I think it's just nostalgic. In
I
the
think that
same way
makes sense.
Twilight was. Yeah.
This got me thinking, like, I do think we need to have an episode where we talk about like the impact of Twilight and then also the books that came from it, because we talked a little bit about it in our episodes, but that wasn't the main topic. But I think that'd be such a good topic where we could mention this book again, like people not recognize the impact that that book had on people, and then now we have the Akatars, this series, you know, so many other series.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like it's really interesting trends in reading. Like Twilight spurred this like vampire werewolf type of like book. Like there was a bunch of books around that. And then you got like the Hunger Games, which then inspired a bunch of dystopians, which you got like, yeah, Divergent, The Selection, all these stuff. Like there's more than just those. And then like, yeah, I'd be interested to like see the timelines of these like books and these and all the books that came after it. And then yeah, Akatar, and then now you have a bunch of fairy books and fairy smut. Like that's a whole thing. And like where are we headed next? I'm sure there's some dragons. I think dragons are a big thing now with Fourth
Yeah,
Wing. I think we're
I
gonna see a
hope
lot of
so.
dragon books.
Keep it
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, I like dragons. I'm not mad about it. But yeah, I think they're just like it's like anything. There are trends in reading as they go.
Yeah. Let us know if you all want to hear about that. I'm interested.
Yeah, we'll do some research. Find those books.
All right. Mention these next two kind of because the first one I'm going to mention quickly, but so my next two, the first one I've mentioned before, it's called Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. Read it for a book club, and I didn't finish it, which was odd for me. I typically don't DNF books, but I just couldn't get through it. I thought it was very cheesy. And also I listened to it, and the narrator wasn't great. So if you are interested, because it is a popular book at this moment, literally through Booktok, because this concept came through this creator having like this character that she posted videos about on TikTok, which Booktok, you know, inspired her to create this book. So people did like it. People in my book club, it was almost like a roller coaster where like you weren't sure where it was going to end up. They ended up really liking the ending, and so I will never learn about that. So I DNF'd it. But anyways, check it out if you'd like to. I don't know. I'm iffy about it. But and then Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I started this book a couple years ago, and I typically like Neil Gaiman's books. Again, he created one of my most favorite books ever, Coraline, which turned into a great movie. But this book was just like kept going. I just felt like it kept going, and I think over halfway through, and I just couldn't finish it. There's too many characters, too many things to keep in mind, and sometimes I don't think Neil Gaiman writes women that well, and so I DNF'd it. But also, I think it was a Libby situation where it got returned, and I just never pressed hold again. So
Something like if you didn't press hold again, you're probably just like not interested in like pressing hold again to some extent.
I'm just like, let it be, let it go.
Wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to finish this. Goodbye. Honestly, we could have done a whole exercise of just looking at our Libby. I could have done this and seeing all the books that I like had and clearly didn't finish. And I was like, yeah, that would probably worked. Like all the books I DNF'd.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's nice that they have that like history, like the timeline to see that.
Yeah, I agreed. Neil Gaiman is an author that I like. I know that if I care about literature, I'm supposed to like, but I can't. Yeah, he just does not seem like a writing style that I would enjoy. But granted, I haven't really tried, so I don't know.
I don't think you will like it. I'll be honest. I just know you at this point, and I think you'll DNF it too if you try. I'll try and look. I think perhaps he has some stories with like love in it, but still, like the reason I'm into it and like our other friend Rachel's into it is because like he writes about spooks. It's like it's eerie, it's creepy. It's not necessarily scary, but it's just like mysterious, and that's what gets you interested in his books.
Yeah, and I don't care about the spooks that much. There's okay if there's spooks, if there's like, again, romance or just like characterization. I just care about characters more than I care about like a plot. Like I need a good plot, don't get me wrong, but I just want to like emotionally connect to the characters. So if there's like spook and like I don't care about the character, then like whatever. I don't know.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sexy spooks.
Sexy spooks.
Just personality spooks.
Some kissing. I just want now kiss.
These two ghosts kiss.
These ghosts kiss. Ooh, I mean, maybe. I would read that. Someone write it.
Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
New audience. There you go.
Indeed. Indeed, yeah. You got a whole genre, romantasy genre, Neil Gaiman. Get into that. Okay, my last book. This is going to be probably my most controversial one for the fantasy girlies because I am one of you. This is a series that is very well loved. I couldn't do it. I read the first one and I DNF'd the second one. And it is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a political romance novel, political fantasy with romance. I would not consider this a romantasy because it's not romance forward. But obviously the romance is a big deal in the series. People love this book. I don't think it's poorly written by any means, but I just couldn't connect with any of the characters. The main female character, she's a badass, but like in a way that I just couldn't connect to. And I didn't like the romance because the main guy is rude half the time and not like in a funny way, just like he literally I think tries to murder her like 4 times, which granted I have read books where that's the case and have ended up liking it, I don't know. It's just like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case it didn't. And also because he has a tail. He is like half cat or something. I don't know what he is, but he has a tail. And anytime it's described, I'm like, I can't. The Lord will not let me read this.
The Lord will not let
I have to turn it off. I can't. I see art with his tail and I'm like, I have to look away. Like I just hate it. I hate the tail. So immediately it was like, I'm out. I finished the first book, but the second book I was like, I think I'm done. I'm done here.
Interesting. I've heard this book recommended by lots of people, but I've never heard like a synopsis about it, but that's so funny. You do hate like any animalistic traits at all.
I really do not like. It'd be different if like everyone was an animal, but anyone that's like half human, half animal, nope.
What do you think about the Bat Boys with wings? Akatar?
Well, I think we talked about this. The wings are like as far as I'll go, but I actually ignore the wings half the time. Like anytime the wings are mentioned, I do get icky. I do get the ick. Like I don't love it. Especially in like the sexy scenes. If like when they do like they touch their wings, I'm like, "Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it." I'm not a fan. So, but they're like such a small thing and I don't think they're like mentioned. Granted they're technically big wings, but I don't think they're mentioned that often in a way that I can kind of ignore it. The tail freaks me out. The tail just freaks me out. I think wings are just also sexier looking versus a tail. I don't know.
Makes sense. I think I'm getting the logic.
Like none of this is logical, but a tail just grosses me out. It's like so animalistic. Whereas the wings, I guess they can like fold in. I don't know. You can hide them. I don't know.
And like angels exist, you know what I mean? And yeah, so like I guess you could relate it to that.
Yeah. I think they just don't have as much of a presence a lot of the time in the book is really what it is. So I just ignore it. Like it's not an attribute that I choose to focus on. Even in my drawings, I will just ignore them half the time. Like I would draw the characters without the wings. But yeah, tail's too much.
Nice.
Nice.
Good to know. Good to know. When I'm recommending books.
Yeah, like, this character has a tail. Nope.
No, she'll hate it.
No, she'll hate it.
I think that's and there's the tails. Just
that's like my worst nightmare in a book. We're basically giving people like, here's how to write the worst book for Olivia. Make it contemporary somehow, but still have a tail involved. Awful. I don't know.
I think you might not like Crescent City. It's possible you might not like it. It's contemporary. It's like contemporary fantasy.
Yeah, did we just describe Crescent City? I think we did.
I can't remember if there's tails. No, there's tails. There's tails. Yes. There's a woman who's described as like beautiful and sexy who is a doe.
Oh, I don't like that.
You got to read Crescent City. You got
this sounds like Sarah J. Maas wrote my worst nightmare.
I think so. But there is a love story, which is cool. But
okay, one column, like one tick in the pro column.
1 point.
1 point. Whereas there's like now negative in the cons. And it connects to like the rest of ACOTAR and Throne of Glass supposedly. So that's a plus. We'll see.
All right. You don't have a lot of time. The new book's coming out.
I know. I'm not gonna be able to finish it. I haven't even started the first. I said I would, and I haven't.
Olivia says things to me and then doesn't follow through.
You're correct. I do. I'm so sorry. But it's not you. I do this to everyone. Like,
and now this is an intervention.
Like, Olivia doesn't do what she says she will. Like, yeah, it's true. When it comes to books, absolutely. The amount of things I said I would read and have not. Yeah.
That's fair. I get it.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, your last one. What is it?
Yeah, and it's probably what you relate to as well. Self-help books, educational books. Like I know, like that it's good for me, and there are books that I haven't finished, so it's not completely like binary. Like I will not read it, but like because there are some that I have enjoyed, but like, oh man, once you get in the world of like fiction and fantasy, I do have friends that like do not like fiction and like only read like nonfiction or like self-help books and educational books, and good for them. I can't do it. It like to the point where I was trying to think of books within these genres and I couldn't think of any that I've read within the past 1 to 2 years. So yeah, I can't. I can't. There's some books I do like, but most of the time can't do it.
I relate to this. I was talking to my cousin during Thanksgiving. She's reading ACOTAR right now, but she's like, then I got to go back to like books that are good for me. And I think she was meaning like self-help books. And I was like, you would do that? Like I don't think ACOTAR is like the best book in the world, but like, I mean, I wouldn't jump from ACOTAR to a self-help book. Like, what are you doing? Like, no, I would never.
That's a crazy jump.
That's a crazy jump. No, I would just go to a better fantasy, not a self-help book.
Yeah, that's what typically has happened is like the fantasy to more fantasy pipeline. You start with ACOTAR and keep going.
And you find just a fantasy that makes you feel like, because fantasy can be a well-written genre, absolutely, and like, you feel good reading it, and you feel like you've bettered yourself. Like, I don't need self-help to feel like I bettered myself. Give me a good fantasy. I consider anyone who reads, well, mainly men. I consider men who read Atomic Habits toxic. If they mention the book Atomic Habits to me, especially if it's a man, I'm like, toxic. Red flag.
There are issues. I did like parts of that book. I read some of it, which was one of the books I was actually going to mention that like I didn't hate that book. I thought it was helpful, but there was a podcast that came out that called out the writing and like the data he used. He like misrepresented data in that book. But I thought like the concept, the what's it called? Like the framework helped me like be better with my habits. But I do agree that it's become this like literally any male cis dude entrepreneurial dude will name Atomic Habits as like their favorite books.
1,000. Yeah, that's more what I'm coming from. That's good. I've never read it, so I shouldn't judge it. But yeah, it has become this like genre of men that recommend it. Exactly what you said. That I'm like, that is a toxic entrepreneurial man that I'm out.
Right. Yeah. It's like a red flag. It's like, oh, you mentioned that?
Yeah. And you're not mentioning it like you're mentioning it while you're talking about your startup that you're trying to build and work 50 hours a day. And I'm like, okay. I know who you are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We appreciate you all for coming every week and listening to us. You can follow us on every social media platform, I'm sure. TikTok. So are we on Twitter? No, we're not on Twitter or Threads. But we individually are, Olivia and me. You can follow us there. We're on YouTube and Instagram. So follow us there, Fangirl Feels Pod. Also give us individual follows and likes. We appreciate that as well. We come to your feeds every single week. So stay tuned for our next episode. And also give us feedback on things you like and don't like. We always want to meet your expectations and your standards because we care a lot about that. We want to make this entertaining. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thank you if you made it this far. Thank you for being part of our Spotify Wrapped. If you were one of our top listeners, we really appreciate it. And yeah, all feedback is good. So if you would like to respond to the Q&A at the bottom, please do. And we have some ideas coming. We've been working on a lot of things, but hopefully 2024 will be a year where we continue to grow. So it'll be exciting to see what comes out of this podcast.
Yes. And we're not even a year in, baby. So
No,
we got more to come.
we do. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you.
Woo. All right. See you all next week.
Next week.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
We're going to harmonize at some point.
Yeah. Bye. I can't sing.